put this on, and actually let's put on to shared screen, and I'll just mention a few things with this. Basically, just mentioning that this meeting is being held remotely due to the current state of emergency, and we're doing our best to provide as much public opportunity to hear these applications. We're using Zoom to provide public access through a link to a video conference or by telephone. We ask that you please be patient. We have disabled the chat and public annotation factors because of unfortunate hackers that seem to be there occasionally. We ask people to follow the procedures. The applicant will speak, the board will ask questions, and then the hearing will be open to the public. Please stay muted until it is your time to speak. We don't want to hear background noise, feedback, and such. Please identify yourself when you speak. I'm going to say, kind of summarizing the rest of all of this. For those who can hear me, if you have a problem participating, and we recently received an email from someone saying that there are people who have had problems participating, please email me. I will read emails at the public part of the meeting, the beginning of the public part of the meeting. And I've got my email up. So if you have any problems doing that, please email me, mcypes@hinesburg.org. And let me stop the sharing if I can get to there we go. And I think we have Sarah.
Oh, and Brandon.
And we got Brandon. Good.
Yeah.
All right, we've got the people. All right, Dennis.
All right, agenda changes?
I don't have any.
All right, if the board members can review the minutes of April 21st.
Is on the culvert thing, is a culvert a thing, or is that just a typo? There's a couple of those coverts instead of culverts, I think. The inlet thing that they put, the 30-inch inlet thing, is that called something? What is that called?
I thought it was just simply a culvert, but
okay. So anyway, just do a spell check on covert, C-O-V-E-R-T. I think that something got changed over with an automatic spell check. But all in all, I think it captured the meeting pretty well.
All right, very good.
Looks good.
Does anybody else have any changes?
Nope, looked good to me.
I move to approve.
I'll second that. John Lyman.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Dick
Aye.
Jordan, aye.
Dennis, aye.
Sarah Murphy, aye.
All right, up next, Jim Donovan and Patricia O'Donnell for a final plat review for a 3-lot subdivision.
I know. Mitch, do you want a short presentation, or is it acceptable? Whatever you'd like.
Why don't you start with the short presentation? I would recommend. Forgive me, I'm trying to help somebody of the public who's having a problem here.
I'm Jim Donovan, Patricia O'Donnell, my spouse. We're proposing a 3-lot subdivision for the property at 16 Mechanicsville Road. We got our sketch plan about a month and a half, 2 months ago. Pretty much nothing has changed since the sketch plan as we move from sketch to final. It was classified as minor, so we are going from sketch to final. The submitted plans show the building envelopes as requested. It shows, in addition to what we had last time, we also show the, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the word. Fluvial erosion hazard areas, so that our building envelopes are outside of the 75-foot stream setbacks, the wetland setbacks, the fluvial erosion setbacks, and the required setbacks from property lines, as well as 2 drainage easements that we noted as we were doing our research for the final. So we do not have those inside the building envelope as well. No development is proposed on Lot 3, although we did get an access permit to show that we will be able to eventually get access to that parcel from CVU Road for at least 1 building envelope and possibly more. We do have a note in here that no access will be provided to Lot 3 from Mechanicsville Road because it has to cross all of those things, the wetlands, the stream, the fluvial erosion, in order to get there, and we didn't think that that was advisable. We have proposed a sewer easement for Lot 3 over Lot 2, or Lot 2 is granting it to Lot 3 in a location to be determined in the future in the event that they are able to bring a sewer line down to the sewer on Mechanicsville Road. Although we did also find that the sewer easement, the town sewer, actually along the southern edge of Lot 3 behind the lots on Mechanicsville Road and then turns down. While we are granting that easement. We do have a note saying that no further development is allowed on Lot 3 until we come back to the DRB or whoever the lot owner is if we end up selling it. And I think those are most of the issues. We do have some of the utilities mapped. We are still working on finding where all the underground utilities are on the site itself. We were supposed to have that done this morning, but the people that were supposed to come out and do it didn't show up. So I don't have that information, although we did provide a sketch plan showing where they are as far as we know, and they're generally in those locations. What we learned is that the mobile home on lot 603 actually gets its sewer and water through the house at 613. So we are going to be disconnecting that, and they'll be getting their own connections in the future when lot 1, which has the mobile home on it, is developed. I think that's basically it. Any other questions? We can try to answer them.
Jim, did you see the staff comment?
Yes.
You took care of that, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Initially, I wasn't aware. I had things backwards, and we thought that the stream that runs to the south of the barn was not was not as part of the stream. But when we found that it was, we modified our building envelope in that location so that it's set out. It actually creates 2 smaller building envelopes on lot 2. The stream setback sort of divides the buildable area.
Okay. Any of the board members have any questions?
I guess just one. This is Dick Jordan. So the small building envelope to the right of the barn. I mean, looking at the size of the square for the barn, is that a reasonable? So the building envelope meets all setbacks, right? So basically, your building could fill that entire area.
Yes, although it actually is larger than it looks. This is
Okay.
Jonathan again. You could do like a 24 by 36 house, and it would fit in there with room to spare.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, there is one more thing. There are 8 possible units that could be developed between lots 1 and 2. We are assigning 2 of them to lot 1 and the other 6 of them to lot 2, so that there is a potential for 3 additional units on lot 2 and potential for 2 units on lot 1.
Okay.
So that's additional units beyond what's already in, because that the dwelling on lot 2 is currently already multiple apartments, right?
Yes, it has 3 units in it, and there's a total of 6 possible.
Okay.
So I take it that the barn, one of the barns is actually in a location that is not outside, that is within the restricted areas of the setbacks?
Yes.
Actually, it looks like both of them, actually.
Oh, could be.
Yeah, both of them definitely are.
Okay.
They're both considered pre-existing non-conforming structures.
Right, but my point was they can't be converted to something else where they're located. They may just be pole barns for that matter. I don't know.
They are just pole barns.
Okay.
If they wanted to, in the future, expand those structures or make the typical changes as they're not conforming, they would have to come back to the DRB for conditional use approval. That said, if the owner of Lot 2 wanted to create 3 new lots within the areas of the shown building envelopes, then that's something that they could get a building permit for.
So Dick Jordan again, the gravel driveway on lot 2, so it's clearly in the stream buffer. So I get that it's an existing condition. I should know my regs better, but are there in a situation like this, would there be additional safeguards or whatever you want to call it that we would potentially put in a decision to, mechanisms for trying to make sure the gravel driveway doesn't migrate into the stream or anything like that?
Well, if they wanted to expand the driveway, since it is in a stream setback, the landowner would have to get approval for development in a stream setback. Or at least
Okay.
anything that the zoning administrator would think would not be diminutive.
Okay, because I guess I'm also thinking of like water quality. So obviously one of the reasons you don't put them in there is because you don't want water running right off the driveway into the stream. So I don't know if there would be ways of trying to help keep the water from running aggressively or directly into the stream because of the situation. But honestly, I don't know if our regs even have any teeth in that regard.
Well, it is a pre-existing condition, and that's the aspect of it. If the landowner wanted to expand it or change it in any major way, then they're coming back to the board.
Okay.
So we should certainly put a no changes clause in any approvals, just to advise.
Okay, works for me.
All right, I'll open it up to the public.
I have a question. This is Andrea.
Okay.
Dick was just mentioning about the buffer. I mean, there is, I think in the regulations say that you're not supposed to mow within the buffer. And so allowing that vegetation to, it's pretty wild back there now. And any vegetation that can stay along the stream bank would be good. So I think the intention of those buffers is to allow them to revegetate. So you may want to consider using the existing regulations that say don't mow.
That's a good point, Andrea, and we'll craft the decision to bring that aspect up into it. Although what you're actually talking about is more the stream buff with the village stream buffers as opposed to stream buffers overall, but both of these are in the village.
But the provision would be that he could remove invasives? And I know Jim is very good at removing invasives.
All right. Is there anybody else from the public? You still there, Mitch?
I'll move to close the public hearing and direct staff to draft conditions of approval.
I'll second that. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Jordan, I.
John Lyman, aye.
Dennis, aye.
Sarah, I.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Greatly appreciate it. And
Stay safe.
to get the written approval. Same to you. Thank you very much.
All right. Have a good night.
Thank you.
All right. Up next is Blackrock Construction, Haystack Crossing LLC, preliminary plat and conditional use review. The topics that we're discussing tonight are density bonus calculation, affordable housing, the central green, connection to the Hinesburg Center II, building heights, residential and commercial phasing, and a needed subdivision revision. And then after that, we'll get public input. So who's up?
Well, where do we want to start, Mitch?
All right. I guess let's go in the order. My recommendation, and I'll speak for a little bit if that's fine with you, and please chime in if need be. The first thing I put down here was density bonus calculation. Mike, you did a very good job of in your narrative, in a sense of how explaining the development, but from a regulatory prospect aspect of it, I thought it would be just good to really kind of concentrate it to make it very clear for the DRB. Simply put, we wanted to bring this up to the board to make sure that there was, or just see if there's any concerns as far as how the calculation was being done. The applicant calculated 33.228 acres of land that was in the Northwest zoning district outside of a stream buffer. We had a chance to look at that and it seemed very reasonable. The density without any bonuses, the base density is 3 units per acre, which calculates to 99.68. The applicant has provided for a full build out that they will utilize 2 incentive points to get a 50% bonus. Those namely are for small dwelling sizes and renewable energy. And again, they'll have to be able to show those particular ones when appropriate. And the other 70% of density to get the full 120% density bonus will be done with affordable housing. And for the entire project, they will be proposing 50 dwelling units that will be considered affordable. That said, and that's for the full build out, what they have proposed in their first phase.
Can I make what that's not entirely accurate. The first density bonus actually gives you 50% density. So we were proposing we were going to use 2 density bonus incentives, and that creates 75% of your density bonus. And we were going to use the affordable for the last bit of it. So if you look at the narrative, it's actually a total of 30% is the is the total affordable units.
And actually, this is exactly why I wanted to bring this to you. If you look at the chart in section 2.9, for 2 incentive points under the Village Northwest zoning district, you get 50%. The 75% you're talking about is for the Village zoning district, not the Village Northwest. And I'm looking here at page 9 of the zoning regulations. And so basically, you need 2 incentive points to get 50%. And those 2 incentive points that you're proposing for the full build out would be for the smaller units and the energy, renewable energy. So that said, that's why I wanted to bring this up and make sure we're all on the same page on it.
That hasn't been brought up to us yet. Has that been brought up to you, Ben?
Mitch wanted to clarify. So when we spoke last week, he had expressed some concern in discussing the where the density calculation, how it all came together.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mitch. Could you just point out where in the does it decipher between the Village and the Village Northwest for the density bonus?
All right, if you're looking at the zoning regulations, it's on page 9, section 2.91, and there is a chart. It says percent density bonus by district, and on the left-hand side, it's total incentive numbers, and at the top, it's VG for Village, VG-NW for Village Northwest, VGNE, etc.
I see that. So that does mean that there's a mistake in the narrative, in the original narrative. So that's correct. So what you're saying, that was a mistake in the application.
So Mike,
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, Mike, what we may need to do is, offline after this meeting, we may have to just review that and, and make sure we're still comfortable with that number.
And what Mitch was saying makes perfect sense. We would just make it up with then it just increases the number of affordable house residential units that need to be provided in the development.
Correct, and we're coming into phase 1 with 20 proposed units, so we're almost halfway there. We just got to look at what that means in phase 2 in order to get it done. So,
And we can talk about this further in the future, see if there's any other possibilities and so forth. But for the first phase, which, as you said, you're proposing 20 affordable units, which provides for a 40% density bonus, which would be 139 dwelling units. And you have 50 congregate units that don't count towards that. And the non-congregate units is 126. 139 is bigger than 126. So for the first phase, it appears you do meet the standard. And that's what I wanted to say as far as the first one. And again, like I said, I just wanted to clarify it. Dennis?
Great, thank you. I appreciate that.
So there'll be a new submission or new calculation, and we'll look forward to that, right?
Yeah, I think the only thing that really changes is if you look at the density narrative, instead of it being highlighted on the 30% level, it changes it to the 50% level. So it's not a huge change from the application materials. It's just a change in how many units that need to be provided.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice. So, this is Dick Jordan. I guess when we're looking at this as one board member, Since we heard last week that phase 2 is not guaranteed, I guess whatever bonus points are being given, I guess it's 20% worth of bonus points. I guess I would like to see that those were apportioned somewhat relative to the potential residential's elements in phase 1 and phase 2, so that basically phase 1 doesn't get all the bonus points and then phase 2 is never developed. So that would just be something I would like to see when we reevaluate the numbers.
And I don't think it's structured that way. So phase 1 stands alone from a bonus perspective, correct? Right. From a density.
So for phase 1, the only to completely build out phase 1, it requires a total of 30 additional residential units, basically. So that we already, since we're over 10 units, we are already triggered into the requirement to provide 10 affordable units. So that provides 20 additional units. So that means we're only 7 units short of being able to fully build out. So that's why we're going to provide the next 10% of affordable units off of base density, which brings our total affordable unit requirement up to 20 units, which gives us an additional 40 units. So that brings our total up to 140 units.
139, but yes.
139, that's correct.
Yeah, and I'll just simply add to that, and Ben, you could comment on it, that basically if you want to get the density bonuses later on, you have to build something that will be able to meet those density bonuses, even though you're not applying for those density bonuses at this particular time.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that. I was more looking to clarify Dick's question of were we somehow delaying requirements, deferring requirements to phase 2 that were serving phase 1, and the answer is no.
Okay, thank you.
Dennis?
Does that lead right into affordable, which is the next subject?
Subdivision revision.
Oh,
Actually, Dennis, do you think there might be any public comment on that?
I thought we were waiting to the end.
No, your choice. I would suggest going through these each one at a time. It seemed to work well last time, but your call.
All right, is there any public comment on the density bonus?
Dennis, this is Andrea.
Hi.
Hi. It's not specifically on the density bonus, but it's tied back into the stormwater and the conditional uses that are being asked for. And, you know, I think that they're maximizing the density and the stormwater pond that is infringing. You know, is there a possibility of changing the location slightly of that stormwater pond so that they don't have to get a conditional use on that? But it might mean that there's one lot that gets changed or something. So I just would ask that the DRB consider the relationship between the overall density and whether there's modifications that are, you know, conditional uses that are needed because they are maximizing the density. So looking at those two in relationship.
Okay.
Can I respond to that?
Yep, go ahead.
Dave's not here, but my understanding of the conditional use for that specific stormwater area, it's not that we don't have room elsewhere in the development to accommodate that stormwater elevation. That particular stormwater pond is serving a very, very small area, and it's going to pick up the drainage from the road that will connect to the south in the Hinesburg Center II. If it wasn't for that connection to Hinesburg Center II, we wouldn't need that stormwater area and it wouldn't have to be located in that area. It has to do with the elevation and that connection. So even if there wasn't anything being built on this property, we still wouldn't be able to move that stormwater pond out of that area.
Okay. Anybody else from the public on density?
Isn't Stormwater's next meeting, is that correct?
Yes, that we have that tentatively scheduled for that.
Okay.
This is,
I don't know whether I should bring up subdivision and layout of all the lots. And I would continue to bring that up in saying that, you know, I'm talking about the density of people living in one area, which is different than what you're talking about the overall density, but just wanted to bring up that point again.
Okay.
This is Carl Bolin. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I had a question. It sounded like the affordable housing number of units might be different than something that's been written, but it's 20 units in phase 1, and there might be a recalculation of how many are required in phase 2.
Correct.
Well, I don't think the number of units is going down.
No, it would.
Number of affordable units.
The number of affordable units, the way that the application was written, that between phases 1 and 2, there would be a total of 30 units. But there was just I just reviewed the percentage of density bonus.
Lost your mic.
And
Mike Boucher, this is Alex. We lost your audio there. If you could just start again.
okay, so basically it will be 20 units of affordable in phase 1. We had originally anticipated 10 additional units in phase 2, but based on the recalculation, it would be an additional 30 units in phase 2 for a total of 50 affordable units.
What?
Okay.
Yeah, we've got like a clock.
Carl, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else on the density bonus? All right, I'll move on to the subdivision revision.
This one here.
Wait, I had one. This is Sarah Murphy. I had one more question about the density bonus. So to clarify, the density that you're asking for, the increase with the density bonus, is that both Hinesburg 1 and Hinesburg 2? How much of the bonus do you need for Hinesburg 1?
Haystack, the first phase of Haystack?
Haystack, excuse me, yes. Sorry.
So for the first phase of Haystack, we only need basically 40 additional units. 20 of those units.
40%. It's 20 units on the first phase
Right.
you're proposing.
Right. 20 he's proposing. I guess the question, and that was the question I think that Dick was trying to ask, is the split between the density bonus, between the phases is kind of hard for us to understand.
Would it be possible to bring up the density calculation chart, Mitch?
I don't have it easily available, but
Okay.
I think
So just to run through it really quickly one more time, the total base density is 99 units for the property. So without doing any type of density bonus, there could be 99 units built. Because there's more than 10 units being proposed, there's a 10% inclusionary zoning requirement. So that means 10% of the units have to be affordable, which equates to 10 units. By providing 10 units as affordable, that automatically provides a 20% density bonus. So that brings the total number of units up to 119 units. So based on just having to do this project, that would be sort of what would be allowed, because there's the base density and we have to do the inclusionary zoning because that's a requirement based on the number of units for this development. Right, so that's the bylaw. Because we're proposing more than 119 units with phase one, we're proposing 130 units, we need some sort of mechanism to allow those additional 11 units. To do that, we're proposing to provide a total of 20% affordable units. The percentage of affordable units is always based off of the base density according to the zoning regulations. So that means we have to provide 20 affordable units. By providing 20 affordable units, that gives us a 40% density bonus. So that gives us 40 additional units for a total allowable unit count for phase one of 139 units, of which we are proposing 130 units.
126.
Sorry.
I'm just going to add one additional fact that's just a factor involved in this is that per the water and sewer allocation, these 20 affordable units are required on this first phase from that particular aspect of it. So the way we're reviewing this is saying using the base density and using what you're required to do by affordable housing requirements through the not only through the regulations, the minimum inclusionary that is that 10% mentioned, but additional units are being proposed as required for the allocations. So they can build up to 139 per the bonuses that they've are proposing, and they're proposing to build less units than that.
And I think that what would help a lot of these questions and clarify this from a legal standpoint, I think it's important for everyone to understand from staff that our application meets the criteria. So we can talk about how it's calculated all day long. At the end of the day, it is Alex and Mitch who it's a pass-fail. We're either meeting the standard or we're not. And so that isn't really for Mike and I to dictate to the board. I mean, we believe we're meeting the standard for phase one. And if that is the case, then that's really a question for staff.
And I did a write. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to do a write-up on this. It's in the supplemental to staff report. If you have any questions on that, hopefully that explains it.
This is Alex. I think that the revision that Mike will prepare that, and we'll get to Mitch, that we can get in the packets for the next meeting, clarifying this will help, and everyone's been briefed on it now, so you'll know what you're looking at when you read the revised version. As to Ben's comment, yeah, Mitch and I have reviewed it and worked with them in depth to try to make sure that the bonuses that they're seeking are possible. I think that the Energy Committee has some comments or will have some comments regarding meeting the renewable energy bonuses that the project is seeking. So there may be more conversation on that at a later meeting. But Ben's right. What they're proposing is adequate for phase one. And in fact, in my reading, the project, if the renewable energy piece of the bonuses is valid, it goes above and beyond in phase one. There's actually more being done than is necessary to get the bonuses they need for the first phase, because they know they're going to have to do that in order to see the full build out of phase two. So we're getting, the community's getting actually more in phase one than is actually necessary for the bonuses for that phase. I think the revised document will help clear this up.
Okay, we ready to move on?
Think so.
Okay,
All right, the next one we have is the subdivision revision applications. And not to read every part in the supplemental staff report, but basically the applicant is being forewarned that as a condition of the preliminary plot decision, that they will need to get two particular subdivision revision applications, one with the town and one with KB Realty. The one with the town has to do with the change of the entranceway to the rec fields, and the one with KB Realty has to do with a land swap to allow this development's access to Mont Route 116 to line up with Riggs Road.
okay,
And just to
Applicants
clarify,
understand
this
that?
is Alex, the necessary land swap with KB Realty. There was information in your packets about the agreement that the applicant has with KB Realty. So we have good evidence that subdivision revision, that piece of it is possible and will be part of the final plat application for this overall project. The revision with the town has not been discussed specifically, to my knowledge, with the select board, but it's understood. And we're working collaboratively. And again, we expect that application to be part of the final plat application for this project. So I think Mitch put this on really just to make everyone fully aware that there are some contingent applications that will be coming when this project comes back for a final review at a later date.
And thanks for the reminder. Yes, there is a memorandum of understanding that is in your packet. That is on the Dropbox. And Ben and team have done the work to make that part of it happen, or potentially happen.
okay. Ben, do you have any comment, or we all set on that one?
Nope. If we want to jump down to the southern connection, Mitch, because
I'm
that's
fine with that. I'm fine with that.
that's a very similar. That'll be in the form of an MOU with My Lot Real Estate, and it is our intention, hopefully by the next meeting, but certainly by the meeting on June 2nd, we should have an executed memorandum of understanding with My Lot Real Estate to make that connection at a future date when it is possible, following the completion of their infrastructure on the southern side. And to clarify, it's our intention as a component of phase one to build our side of the infrastructure to our property line. And that connection would be a prorated shared expense, again, when possible.
Okay. Any board members have any questions on those two?
I'm all set.
Well, anybody from the public? Okay. We'll move on to development of the Central Green.
Actually, Dennis, it almost sounds like I'm hearing, is there someone trying to speak and not able to get across?
I think
I don't hear him, Mitch.
I think I see Barbara speaking, but I'm not sure. Barbara, 4 hours on our call, and I see you're speaking in your image, Barbara, but I'm not sure if you're looking to speak. You're on mute, and I can't seem to unmute you.
All right.
Mute now. Am I
Oh.
unmuted now?
You are, yes.
Oh, all right, good. My question came earlier. I'm sorry to have to go back to it. May I assume that, am I correct, that in phase 1 and 2, there will be 70 units of affordable housing?
50.
50.
50 units to get a 70% bonus. Although
Okay.
that may change a bit on their application going forward.
All right, thank you.
All right, we'll go to the development of the Central Green.
All right. Actually, Ben, do you want to speak to this one?
Sure. As you're all aware, there is a central green plan that runs east to west from Haystack Road west and connects through a pedestrian connection to the rec fields. And I know as we worked through the sketch plan process, there was much discussion about this parcel. It is shown as future town open space on the town plan. And, it's certainly our intent to work with the town on how to best use that parcel and make it part of the community. But we're really, we've sort of just left it as an open green. And I think it's important to understand what it is that the board would like to see in that space. So the simple challenge of it is we have not represented any sort of community features, be it a swing set or whatever it might be, as we can't develop private amenities for public use. There's liability associated with that, and management of it, so on and so forth. So the long and short is, what would the board like to see here? Would they like to see us develop some amenities that were for a Haystack community use for the time being, but able to be dedicated to the town in the future? Would the board like to see, a simple dedication now of the lands, and they turn over to the town upon development? We're sort of open to it. To be candid, I would like to build some community amenities in there. And we're open to how to transfer those to the town at a future date if the town is not interested in taking them over with some level of immediacy. So for final, we would like to refine this a bit and just have a clear understanding of what this space should be when it comes time to build it out.
And you haven't talked to the select board on this one yet?
No.
Dennis, this is Alex. I think what Mitch and I recommended was that is the next appropriate step, and that could happen between a preliminary plat decision and a final plat application. The select board did just this year adopt our next revised version of the official map. So we adopted an official map in 2009. That was version 1. We finally got around to updating it 11 years later. So this new official map mirrors the development plan that Blackrock through the Haystack project is proposing. So the select board is at least three members of the select board are quite familiar with that and understand the types of amenities that that are described on the official map. The official map is more than a map now. It's both a map and a companion document that talks about the types of amenities that the town was thinking about for these larger public community facilities. So in any case, I'm just reiterating what's been in the staff report, that we think it'd be a good idea to condition a preliminary plat approval on the applicant having a conversation with the select board, so that when this project comes back for final review, there'll be greater clarity to answer the questions that Ben posed. All of those are options. It's just a matter of finding the right one.
Yeah, because I just don't want to see another lot one where we don't have anything on it for years.
Yeah, and I think what Ben just proposed, his preference to perhaps improve the property, even if the town's not going to take it over immediately, would speak to that concern. And if we could come to some agreement about what the amenities ought to be, and the developer is interested in creating some of those with the idea that they would come to the town in the same way that future public roads are built by developers and after approving period then are taken over by the town, that might be a very viable solution. But I think the conversation should happen at the select board level first, so the DRB can just codify it rather than having to invent it.
Okay. Are the rest of the board members in agreement with that?
Now, if there's a liability issue with the ownership staying in the Haystack community, I think it's important to recommend, at least to the select board, that this turn into a public access and then therefore publicly owned green.
Okay.
And sooner is rather probably better than later, because if it's 10 years, Haystack's people are going to own homeowners and whatever are going to think something's being taken away because it'll be theirs.
Yeah, I would agree. Any other board member have any comments?
I would agree the fields or open space should become public. I would agree.
Okay.
Green space.
I would just simply add that it seems that a meeting with the select board sooner than later might be good for the applicant.
No, I'll reach out and schedule it. I just wanted to get the Development Review Board's input, because under that structure, I'm going to go to the select board. They're going to have an idea of what they want. We're going to sort of make a deal, for lack of a better, or come to an agreement, and then we're going to come back to this board, and I don't really want to be caught between the two. So what I don't want to do is you folks send me over to the select board, and then I come back with something you folks don't like. I will sit in this meeting a month from now and say, well, you sent me there, so now here I am. It is what it is.
So for what it's worth, I think there should be walking paths and amenities, and that should be part of the deal. Either that, or it could be an early transferal with money to do those things.
I agree. We are advocates of having community amenities. So I think the board and I are all on the same page. I think this board and I are on the same page with the fact that this should be an amenity-rich community, and it should be for the public. It's just a matter of convincing the select board and public works that is the case.
No, it's not.
So,
Alex, you said the select board you think will be amenable to the taking it over? Or?
I sure hope so. We spent an awful lot of time at the planning commission level working on official map revisions, which the select board, then spent time discussing and then adopting. So I agree that the public works side of it, in terms of maintenance and cost long-term, is always a consideration that can be difficult. But at least on a philosophical level, yeah, this couldn't be any more current in terms of the select board's thinking. And again, we have a list of the desired amenities for this particular spot. So it's not going to come as a shock that there should be some. And what they
Well, we just need to make sure it's set up in a way that the public does use it, and that we're not just taking it over and just the development uses it.
Right. And for historical reference, way back in 2009, when we adopted the first official map, which also showed a public community space in this general area in the Village Northwest zoning district, which was created at that time, the select board at that time was very clear that they wanted there to be a public community space that would draw people from the entire town into this new zoning district and not have it be an enclave. So I think, like Ben said, it seems like here tonight, we're all on the same page about that. And so a conversation with the select board is important, and I trust it will be fruitful.
Yeah, and if we need to meet with them too or something, we can also do that. All right, anybody from the public on the Central Green?
I'll make a comment, Andrea. I think it's Public Works. I think it's also the Rec Commission would be, we tend to think of recreation as just the rec fields and the programs. So I can appreciate that Ben wants to keep moving this along, but if it's going to be public space, then I think it's important that there be sufficient input from the appropriate committees and Public Works and the Rec Commission, and how it integrates over to the ball field. And I would of course want to see trees planted in there. So it might not be happen immediately with one meeting with the select board, because I think the select board may want to be sure that it understands all of the kind of long-term implications of taking it over. But I would just think that they're going to be sympathetic to it, but in a way that especially I was listening to public works directors from towns of like Colchester and Milton, and having to close public parks during this COVID thing because people weren't using them appropriately. So give the select board an opportunity to think about it and get input from Public Works and the Rec Committee as well.
So this is Dick Jordan. I guess before we leave the topic, one question I guess I have, that if it becomes truly a town public area, then I have a question about parking. I mean, do we have sufficient parking in the design that would be able to attract people to come in from, and they're going to drive, they're not going to walk from Texas Hill. So they need a place to park in order to go there, and it can't necessarily be, oh, there's the rec fields over there, go park in that parking lot, because if there's games going on, there won't be parking spaces available. So I think we need to consider that if this is not just for the town, and the way it's kind of structured now, from just my recollection of the site plan, it's walking connected within that development, and not necessarily set up for dozens of cars to drive in and park somewhere. Yes, there's lots of on-street parking, but those could be taken up by people visiting people in the neighborhood. So I guess I just want to make sure that if that's our vision, that we make sure there's sufficient parking for people to come in from outside the neighborhood and be able to park for a few hours.
That's a very good point, Dick.
I can address that a little bit if you'd like.
Sure.
So one of the concerns that we've had in laying out this neighborhood was we almost looked at it in the opposite way, where we expect that there's going to be events at the rec fields in which the parking facilities at the rec fields are not adequate. That this neighborhood is actually going to have to be accommodating overflow from the rec fields, and that's one of the big reasons why we've really been pushing the dedicated on-street parking as opposed to, say, some of the other neighborhoods in the area, like Creekside, where it's just a 24-foot wide road and it's just non-dedicated parking. So you see dedicated parking along all, yet you see we have the same number of parking spaces that you see on any of the other neighborhoods in the area, where you might have 3, 4, even 6 cars in some of these driveways and garages and everything else. On Haystack Road, to particularly accommodate what we were anticipating was going to be a public park, we have a couple dozen angled parking spaces, not just on-street parallel spaces, but there actually are angled parking spaces. Now we can further develop and try to understand what the parking demand will be, but that's going to also largely depend on what the uses of those spaces are. So, if there are programs and documentation that tells you, well, if there's a playground here, you can expect, based on the size of that playground, what age it's for, this is how many cars you can accommodate or expect that could be using that playground. So that's definitely something we have always been aware of through the development of this project. So it's not something that's new to us.
And I would add that remember, there's an additional section of this green that is planned in phase 2 for the eastern side of Haystack Road. And the way this is building out or proposed to be built out really gives us an opportunity to evaluate when we get there. So if we build phase 1 and the on-street parking is adequate, great, it's all working. If it really feels like it wasn't quite enough, then we can evaluate some additional parking to accommodate that public space with that that chunk of land that's set aside for public use. So we've got some future opportunity to correct if we needed to. But as Mike said, that's why we feel very strongly about having the dedicated on-street parking. I live in Williston. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the ball fields here in Williston, but we have a similar setup where once that parking lot is full, there's no place to go for the overflow. So really accommodating a lot of those spots on streets, and in particular in those parallel or the toe-in spots that are on Haystack Road with the pedestrian connection back to the ball fields, it'll lend itself to absorbing that overflow.
Okay, thank you. And I think a lot of this will come to light, before the final, when you guys do have a chance to talk to the select board and get a clear picture of what that use will be. Then you'll be able to address, as Mike was saying, you'll be able to address what the appropriate parking requirements will be.
Yep.
Thank you.
Positive that probably should be added is that there is this interconnectivity between the rec fields and these greens that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Can I, this is Carl Boland, just a quick comment. I'm not sure what people are thinking might go in that green space. And I just would urge, and I don't know, it looks like Phil Pouch is on listening in. I just encourage the select board, the staff, Alex and Mitch, maybe the planning commission, to really make sure there's some outreach to identify possible uses. And so in the end, Ben doesn't go down one path and the community feels they really didn't understand what the options might be. I hope it's a pretty open discussion, and I don't know whether it was Alex, but the sooner that dialogue starts, the better. So Ben has a sense. And I'm also thinking the staff would have what a short list of appropriate community uses for that space, so it doesn't go off the rails, which really aren't realistic. Thanks.
All right, anybody else before we move on? All right, we'll move on to affordable housing units.
And Mitch, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this conversation really tracks with the one we had last week, talking about specifying exact units and locations within the project. Is that your understanding?
It was part that this is, actually just meeting that particular requirement. From the other things that we've discussed today, you are proposing 20 affordable housing units, 10 in the congregate housing, 10 in the rest of the neighborhood. And there are requirements that are to be met with the affordable housing. The regulations go towards identifying as part of the application where those units are going to be. But you mentioned that you want to go in a slightly different direction on that. And I think it'd be good to talk about that.
So in our original presentation, Mike had identified several areas in the development where we were considering affordable housing in both the form of affordable rental housing as well as perpetually affordable for purchase housing. One of the reasons that we've sort of taken this approach of sprinkling it around is we really feel like the affordable housing, be it for sale or for rent, should integrate into the community and not be sort of a standalone. So what I do not want to do is build a 10-unit building over there in the corner that is clearly identified as the affordable housing when you pull into the development, and that's sort of where we put it. We don't feel that that is really in the spirit of community building, and we feel like integrating those affordable units into the rest of the community really is a more appropriate way to treat that type of housing. One of the ways that we have worked on this in other developments is, for instance, we'll take a quad, so 4 townhome units, and we'll make the 2 in the center to be affordable because it's easier to hit the affordability mark on those, and then the 2 on the outside are market rate. So we're meeting the economic constricts of building that affordable housing, but we're not doing it in a way that segregates it from the rest of the community. And you know, we also were far enough lead time, especially given current economic times. You know, if you were to ask me 6 months ago, we're very bullish on perpetually affordable for sale. If you ask me that today, I don't know. So I don't know if this project moves forward in a year or in 3 years. I don't know whether it will be best served to the community to bring, you know, 6, 7, 8, 10 perpetually for sale units, or whether it will serve the community best and be the best economic decision to bring 10 affordable rentals. So we're really looking for that flexibility, both in geographic location within the community, from an economic standpoint, and really from an affordable type standpoint, to be able to bring that to market when the time comes in a form that serves the community the best possible way. So, in summary, if you want me to pick out 10 and that's what they're going to be, then I can do that. I would just submit that if it's a condition that I have to build the 10, as it was explained in Williston to somebody who asked the question recently, I have to pull zoning permits for 10 affordable units, which means that if I build all the first ones and none of them are affordable, by the time I get to those last 10, I don't really have a choice. So that's not how we work. That's not how we intend to build this out. But we really feel that it serves the community better with some flexibility.
As one board member, I have no problem with that.
Yeah, works for me.
Any of the board?
Being more integrated sounds like a good thing.
Yeah.
I like the idea of the mixed integrated.
So I agree with that too, but is there how do you keep from getting to that point where you have 20 units that have 10 units that have to be affordable and you saved them for last? Do we work it on a percentage of completion or something? How do we keep that from happening? Because I think those are all laudable. Integrating is very laudable and I think actually very important. So how do we make that happen as like a condition of approval without making it onerous?
So this is Alex. The regulations actually speak to that in terms of when the affordable units need to come online. So there is some guidance in the inclusionary zoning section about that question. So we can lean on that, and I think the board, with Mitch's help, can write conditions of approval at final that reference that and maybe take it a step further if it needs to be more specific.
Okay.
The second point, though, is a good one. Ben's vision is exactly the vision of inclusionary zoning, not just in Hinesburg, but throughout communities that use inclusionary zoning. It is not simply to create affordable units. It is to create neighborhoods that include everyone and don't shunt, affordable units to the side or to the corner lot. So that's the right vision. But part of the way we realize that vision is to understand where those units will be. And so, Ben, your suggestion that you'd like some flexibility, I think probably makes sense to everyone within the context of the positive inclusionary vision. We just need to understand that there will be a variety and that they will be sprinkled in the way you said. And maybe there's a way that Mitch and you can work on maybe with Carl's help from the Affordable Housing Committee, a way to identify types of units that will likely be affordable, if not specific locations, or something else, just to provide some certainty that that the vision that you laid out, which is the right one, comes to pass.
So maybe what would be helpful is to take the initial illustration that Mike created and write a bit of a narrative to go along with that. So it sort of identifies these are the types of structures or areas within the development that we see the opportunity for affordable housing, and sort of a narrative of what that type of housing is.
I think that would be helpful. And if the board and Ben, you look into the regulations in the inclusionary zoning section, it has language about having the affordable units reflect the type of development, the market rate units. So again, Ben's vision is the right one, and I think we can work that out so that we don't end up with all of the affordable units in rental apartments with no affordable for sale properties and vice versa. So yeah, Ben, I think a narrative would help.
Not only that, because the end result of this is we're going to have to be able to write a decision that reflects this. So maybe at some point when this is more set up, we can work on some language, or from your narrative, you could propose some type of language that could be then incorporated into a decision to both provide you with the flexibility to be able to do it, to provide the affordable housing in the way that we're all agreeing that it should be provided, but also in a way to make sure that it, in terms of regulatory aspect, that it can actually occur that way.
All right, any more board members have any comments before I open it up to the public?
I'm all set.
Do we have anybody from the public that has a comment?
I do.
Carl?
This is Carl Boland. Couple things. I'm now speaking, earlier I was speaking for myself, but now I'm representing the Affordable Housing Committee. And just on that topic that you were just talking about, that was one of our suggestions or recommendations, that there be some flexibility into where the units are located, whether they're for rent or purchase. Definitely do want to see them integrated throughout the development. There might be a way closer to final that maybe our committee would be able to do a market study. Maybe Champlain Housing Trust and Ben would be able to look at market trends at the time when this actually is, if it's approved and is getting close to construction, can deal with what is better, whether it's 5 rental and 5 for sale. But I don't think it would be good to lock the project to some type of bedroom size unit, or whether it's for sale. I would that Ben's planning on 10 affordable units in the congregate senior housing, and he did, in meeting with us, say those would be sprinkled throughout the building. So those 10 are kind of already clear that they are where they would be located if that structure is approved. Probably the key thing for us, and we've appreciated meeting with Ben. He's met with us several times, the last meeting being on March, which was our last meeting where we could physically be in a room together. The key for us is that staff any conditions you make really lock Ben into perpetual affordability. And everything I'm saying tonight, Ben has already knows it's our position, and he has concluded he does want to see those units perpetual. And I would look to Alex and Mitch to know how we do that with covenants or whatever the mechanism is to make sure they're and that their perpetual affordability continues after Blackrock is no longer in the project. So those are legal issues that I would look to have to work out with you, the DRB, in conditions, but I understand Ben would be supportive of that. The other aspect that's pretty important, I think, is the congregate housing. In your first meeting, there was discussions on whether that is considered commercial development or not commercial development, and there's a requirement that commercial development has to happen prior to residential or sort of at the same time. And our committee feels strongly that congregate housing should be considered that commercial, part of the commercial. And there's a couple of reasons for that. The two primary ones, it's much more certain from a development viewpoint that they can be filled, while the other commercial development that's proposed in phase 1 does have risk. It's not clear what would go there. It's not clear. There's already, as Ben shared at that meeting, there's a 25% commercial vacancy rate. And it's even probably a little muddier now with businesses having been shut down. So it seems like that congregate housing should be viewed by the DRB as commercial construction. The second reason is the senior housing is something that is needed based on the needs assessment, and it does include those 10 affordable units. Other points, we've talked to Ben, and we've been working as a committee on affordable housing and have had mixed results. But the largest project in Hinesburg was Green Street, and Ben is willing to seek partnership with Housing Vermont and Champlain Housing Trust, probably more likely in phase 2, to see if we could have a similar type of project be incorporated in phase 2. Green Street, when it was done, basically those units were filled and the need wasn't anything we can do to increase the affordable housing. Phase 2 does have 30 units. That is if the number of units stays as you talked earlier tonight, that number is a high enough number that would probably be attractive to those nonprofit developers to work with Ben. And the timing for when they might be willing to invest money back in Hinesburg is also more likely in phase 2. All commercial space that's proposed, and I'm not talking about the congregate housing in phase 1, we would like to see a condition that it be built in a way that if it's unable to be used for commercial, it could be easily converted to residential. Came up at your first meeting was accessory apartments. As stated, he's absolutely fine with ensuring that accessory apartments can be a part of the development, but he will no longer be the owner of that property. So it has to be some condition that would carry on to the association once they are, I guess, the owner of all the project. And again, I don't know how that is done legally, but now I want to see what happened in Thistle Hill, where accessory apartments cannot be built. And as long as it's done in compliance with state law, Hinesburg zoning regs, I think we should make sure that happens. One thing that Alex and Mitch had said we were to try to find out is bedroom size. I think it's too early for us to commit to the bedroom size for the affordable units. So again, we would see that as something that's flexible and would sort of be determined closer to construction if approved, so that the market at the time could help determine what bedroom sizes are most appropriate. And he does intend for the affordable units in the senior housing to be 1 bedroom and not the 2 bedroom, and our committee does not have an issue with that. And the last thing is we totally support, but we'll defer to the Energy Committee, their proposal to offer solar option to the, any purchaser to have it on their roof. Our plan is to follow this up with a memo to you as the DRB. One other thing that came out of tonight, the small dwelling sizes, just want to make sure that that is not considered, those aren't necessarily perpetual affordable. I don't think that was the intent, but any smaller units that are as part of the project would be, I think our committee would feel is a benefit, because obviously the smaller the unit, the less expensive it is. It may not qualify as affordable, but the affordable units are ones that are totally determined by the income and making sure they're what they're paying is not over 30%. It follows the HUD definitions, and it's based on the area-wide median income at the time of the project. So thanks, and thanks to you, Ben, for working with our committee. And if we work with you and staff and anyone else to sort of figure out any of the details that our regs do require, we just feel it's too early for you to be locked into that. But we're happy to play a role in any way we can to get this affordable housing. And we're commenting on this project solely from an affordable housing viewpoint.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Carl. And just to add a little color for the board to Carl's initial statements, I have discussed with staff that any affordable rental, we would come up with a third-party monitoring that was agreeable. So probably an annual statement from an independent third party verifying that the affordability requirements were being met on rental units. And perpetually affordable housing is actually really easy because it is a deed restriction. So it's actually recorded with the deed in the land records. And in Williston and South Burlington, we use a really simple one-pager that the association president fills out and sends to planning and zoning prior to the transaction. It isn't really any work on staff's part other than to verify that the worksheet was completed. And the deed restriction puts a stopgap in place, so it effectively wouldn't be able to close without meeting that restriction, because the attorneys would be all over it. So there are pretty good mechanisms in place for monitoring that on an ongoing basis.
I guess it's good to just simply add to that, as Ben said, it will be recorded in the land records and it will be perpetually with the decision goes with the land, the properties, not with a particular owner. After public comment with this, Dennis, we're kind of running long with time. I would just simply say, let's push ratio of commercial and residential sequencing to the next meeting and go right to the 3-story building after this.
Okay. So 3-story buildings and fire protection.
We have public comment.
No, we're going to hear from the applicant first.
Wait, more
Okay.
public comment on still on affordable housing. We done with public comment on affordable housing?
No, I'd like to comment.
Yeah.
I have 2 questions. It's Barbara 4-hour. First question, who is responsible for maintaining the rental units? Will it be Blackrock?
It would be whatever entity owns the apartment building, and BlackRock may or may not be a component owner of that building. I couldn't say right now.
Okay, second question is, can you tell us where there is a development that does have this integrated housing somewhere locally?
You meaning the perpetually affordable?
Yes, yes. Well, no. The inclusionary, where you mentioned the 2 outside units would be purchased, the 2 inner units would be rental.
Perpetually affordable is what you're speaking of. We just broke ground on a project which has 9 perpetually affordable units in it, and we have modeled that after 2 other developments, that not our developments, but 2 that we were familiar with, one in South Burlington, one in Williston. And if the board would like, I'd be happy to share what that agreement looks like with a neighboring town. We're just putting the finishing details on it, but I'd be happy to share that document just as an FYI. It doesn't mean that that's the exact version that we would use in this case, but it might give you an idea of what it looks like.
Could you tell me where those are located or what their name is, please?
There, one in South Burlington. The name is escaping me. Hang on. And again, this is not our project.
And just to give you an idea of something locally, Hinesburg Center I, with the Kinney Drugs and Bristol Bakery, there's actually affordable units in that development. Alex, how many is there? One, maybe two? It's not many, but there's a couple.
There's just one unit in the Hinesburg Center I project. And then the Green Street project was required to have two, but of course it was purchased by Champlain Housing Trust. So the bulk of the 23 or so units are in fact perpetually affordable.
And there was a project on Lily Lane in South Burlington, which was sort of the foundation for our concept at Northridge, which is the project we just recently started in Williston.
Thank you.
So Dennis, do you want to take us do you want to skip item 6 and go to the third story as Mitch suggested? What's your pleasure?
Well, Ben, I had a quick question. Lily Lane. So if we drove into that, we wouldn't be able to tell which ones were affordable, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they're all. Again, it wasn't our development. I was not the developer. We were not the builder. The builder is an acquaintance of mine. The developer is an acquaintance of mine. So that is that is where we got the foundation for our foray into a perpetually affordable.
Right, but I'm just saying the point of the mixing them all in, we wouldn't be able to go into your new development and tell which ones are affordable.
No, actually, the one that we just broke ground on, there are several different unit types in there, and you really can't tell which is which.
Okay. All right. Yes. Is that all for public comment on affordable housing? All right. Yes, we're going to move.
Actually, I have a
go
comment. Can you hear me?
It's a little hard to hear you, Catherine. Maybe you could speak up.
Okay. This is Catherine Goldsmith. And Alex, the Green Street units are rental, affordable housing rental, are they not?
That's correct. The Green Street affordable units are rental units.
That's what I thought. And just a side comment, I actually own a perpetually affordable unit that was in a mixed condominium development myself.
I can't understand the words she's saying. I don't know if anybody else can.
Yeah, Catherine, we're still having a hard time hearing you. I'm not sure if it's your mic or just the connection. Maybe try one more time with your central message.
I'll leave it for later.
Okay. Feel free to email Mitch and, it can be provided to everyone in advance of the next meeting.
Or if you want, email me now and I'll read what you want to say.
Mitch, we're going to move on. It's getting late.
Okay.
Yeah, Dennis, just to clarify, one of the reasons that I was goading Mitch about moving on is my hope that we could have some time for general public comments, not per the script that we've laid out. So just know that if we could do a few minutes of that at the end, that would be good and as advertised.
Yep.
I think that's just going to be a given for all of our Zoom meetings, just to give the public a chance. Are we going to be talking about such and such? And this way people can actually chime in on that and we could cover all the different topics that someone would want.
Okay. So on to 3-story buildings and fire protection.
All right, Ben, you want to take this one? Or you want me to start?
Why don't you run with it? I mean, I've got Al's email chain here. And I don't know. Why don't you give us a little overview flavor?
Although, actually, Al, are you with us?
Absolutely.
All right, great. I'll
How you
start.
doing?
Please chime in. I mean, you're the expert on this, so I'm going to basically say some things that you have mentioned to me. Is that simply put, the fire department has the ability to service up to 28 feet. A ladder truck, which has not been purchased by the town at this time, can actually go up to 70 feet. That said, with our 28-foot limit for the ladder truck, and we've had a 35-foot height limit on buildings, what is proposed at the beginning of the development is the congregate housing, which would be, I'm going to say, like a 3.5-story building with heights that are going to far exceed 35 feet, and is going to be a bit of a challenge for what is currently available by the fire department. Although it wouldn't be, it's not unique. There are some other buildings that have in town that are a challenge for the fire department to service. That said, it is on the town's schedule to purchase a ladder truck soon, and this development will probably help in making that purchase. However, it may be a bit of a challenge as far as, since the first building, and even as you heard Carl mention from the Affordable Housing Committee, it's kind of a desire for it on those ends to go first, but maybe a little bit of a challenge for the fire department. I hope that's a good beginning. Al, Ben?
Yep.
Go ahead, Al.
Well, yeah, I think that pretty well captures it. I mean, the building, I'm assuming, will be sprinklered anyways because it's over 2 stories. So really the question comes for life safety aspect of it. You know, an individual apartment may have a fire in it, which will be probably dealt with by the sprinkler system. But when it comes to actually, if it say it was a fire on the 2nd story, where you have people living above the fire, if they were not able to exit, that's where the real need for that type of apparatus comes in. And also, you know, most of the structures that are done nowadays, they won't support any firefighting activities on the roof. So you really need to do them from an aerial device. So that's really the two aspects of it that's important. Like I say, I'm assuming they'll be sprinkled anyways because it's over 2 stories. So that part of the actual fire extinguishment should be handled by that.
So Al, this is Dennis.
Yes, sir.
Can you? So, do we have another town that could come with a ladder truck?
Well, we do have Shelburne and Williston, but you know, one of the problems being is you're talking about actual rescue versus putting out fires. If it was just putting out a fire, it's not that important that it's there immediately.
Yeah.
When you're actually talking about the life safety aspect of it, you need it there immediately. So, yeah, I mean, Williston and Shelburne, when we had the cheese plant fire, Williston and Essex Junction was there. So, I mean, they are available if we're just considering putting out the fire aspect of it.
So if there was a call to that building, is there a way that we would know that we would have to call Williston?
Well, it's
immediately, or how does that work?
Oh yeah. It's in the automatic mutual aid. I mean, we have that in place now for all the other buildings that we can't reach. So, you know, Shelburne Dispatch will automatically send them because we have it all set up.
Okay. Now, you're looking at possibly buying a used truck?
Yeah, that's correct. We've kind of done a lot of thinking about how we'll approach, how to best approach it for an affordability and being able to make it work for everybody, I guess is the way to put it. And,
Right.
There's quite a lot to it because we have some other issues with another truck. So, in looking at the big picture, we believe the way to do this first truck is definitely a used truck.
But we'd also have to build a building to put it in too, right?
Well, short answer is yes, but again, we do have the old fire station. A lot has to do with the whole ambulance issue also.
Mm-hmm.
But it, depending upon the timetables of everything here, I think it would be workable by the time that first building was probably built. We might be able to figure out a short-term accommodation, to make it work for a short term, but eventually we have to have more space, definitely.
Okay.
Al, this is Alex. Just to follow up on Dennis's question, my understanding from the capital budget and plan, which shows the potential purchase of this aerial truck in fiscal year 2024 or 2025, it's to be determined. I believe it was going to replace another truck. So I was under the impression that there would be space in the existing firehouse. Are you saying that there would be, but if we do the local ambulance service, then there wouldn't be space for both?
No, the ambulance really is a whole separate issue. The truck that it would be replacing is engine 2, which, given the other trucks that we have, replacing engine 2 would not give us enough room, to start with. We'd have to other apparatus to be able to actually fit it into the building, or we'd have to find a temporary building, temporary housing for it.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
I know we've been having impact fees, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Toward buying
right,
this
yeah.
truck?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. And we do have, if we went to the used route, currently we're probably pretty close to having enough money in that impact fee to actually purchase a used truck. So, given the building that's being built, I think we probably would have enough money in the impact fee account to actually purchase that truck outright, which, then would not even put it, it wouldn't even be, have an impact on the tax rate because it would actually be bought outside of it. And it would, in the long run, would actually help everything quite a lot.
So you're saying you would have enough money in there before phase 1 was built?
I think that first building, once the building we're actually talking about, with the impact from that one, and assuming things come back around, I think we'd be very close. Yeah.
So more than likely you'd be buying it a lot sooner than 2024.
We could, I guess, and again, it really depends on Ben's time frame. That it's pretty integral to each other. So it could well be done in the right time frame to be able to purchase it to service the building by the time it's completed.
Okay. Because Alex, I have a question about impact fees.
Yeah, go ahead, Dennis.
So I was under the impression that impact fees are only good for 6 years.
That's right. We collect the impact fees when people pull zoning permits of various sorts. And if we haven't used the money within 6 years, then the person who paid it can request to get it back. We've been collecting impact fees for both police and fire. I think, help me out here, Mitch. I think it's since 2008, maybe 2009. And the police impact fees are simply going to pay for the bond payments on the new police station. So that's neat and tidy. The
Yep.
fire impact fees, a good slug of those have already been used to help pay
Mhm.
for the design of a new fire station, which if some of you
Yeah.
board members remember, we went through a permitting process when the town was seeking to expand the fire station and the police station. And we did full-blown architectural designs and site planning. So a good chunk of those fees was used at that time. Of course, we haven't moved forward with the expansion of the fire station because of the other costs. So the fees that we've been collecting since we used that initial batch are still available. And Mitch has done a pretty good job of coming up with what the balance in that account is, and then estimating how much the Haystack Crossing project would add to that balance if it were built out for phase one. So Mitch will be providing those numbers at a future meeting. So yes, Dennis, we would give those monies back, but I don't think we have any of those monies that have hit the 6-year mark because we used a portion of them already.
Okay.
And we also have revised that original plan, and then we have actually have a new design for a completely different station at a different spot. So any of those funds that were, getting near that 6-year mark definitely been used.
Okay.
The select
And
board.
a used truck, that's something that they're readily available, or?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Actually, there's.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Al, this is Alex again. Sorry to make this a Dennis, Al, and Alex show, but can you clarify just a ballpark figure for what a used truck might cost? I don't remember if you had that in your email. I'm thinking of the capital budget and plan where the range of cost for the new truck is quite large.
Yeah, a new truck would be $1 million. So there is a truck that in Vermont, I won't say where it is so nobody will buy it, but it probably $150,000 would buy that truck, and it actually has extremely small amount of use, but they have it in their capital plan, and they put aside money every year, and it's due for replacement in about a year. So,
all right, go buy it.
That sounds like a deal.
it actually is a very good deal. That's why I don't want to say where it is.
Got to be able to get one of them government loans. They're handing out money left and right.
Well, I hope.
All right, where are we now? Any board members have any questions?
Mine is it's all about timing. When the 3 stories built, you need the truck. You don't need the truck until the building's built. So it's really the timing of those two factors.
You got room in your barn?
I can make it work.
Okay.
For the appropriate lease fee.
No.
I mean, I guess my only comment is probably ridiculous, but I mean, I assume the concept of fire escapes and things like that are gone these days. You don't build buildings with fire escapes.
Oh no, they're internal fireproof stairways, basically. Yes, yes, the internal stairways are basically fireproof so that you can have a means of egress.
Okay. Well, I was thinking more like external, so that you could get to them externally if you need, in lieu of having a ladder. You could still get to windows and things like that. Granted, they're not architecturally very pretty, but.
And I think that it's important to remember that building a building like this is a 12 to 14 month project. So from the time we pull a zoning permit to the time of C of O, it's well over a year. And, I think that there is some redundancy with towns. So if there was a short gap between operations and the delivery of a new truck. There's certainly a mechanism in place to cover for that. I think that the larger picture, which it sounds like Al is all over, is making a decision to start a building like that does sort of start a clock of needing to find a solution. But of course, it is chicken and egg. The impact fees from a building like this are helpful towards reaching that goal, but you kind of can't have one without the other.
So something that just occurred to me that might be more useful is, could you, as you populate the building, could you, intentionally populate the third floor last, so that you could still access the lower floors, and by the time the third floor is populated, perhaps the facilities or whatever the equipment's available.
Theoretically, yes.
Do I take it we already have some inaccessible buildings in town? Is that true or not true?
Yes, it is. Yeah, we have quite a number of them. They're both a good example of them. Where Thistle Hill has quite a few of them, where they're actually a two-story house, but it has a garage in the basement. So actually, it makes it in our eyes, that's a three-story building. And again, we can't go on the roofs of those because of the types of construction. So, as long as people get out, we will do our best, and we will wait until the right equipment gets there, which typically won't leave a lot of the structure left, unfortunately. But as long as the people can get out, and CBU is one, the white building at the school at Hinesburg Community School is one. So there are a number of buildings that are beyond our ladder reach currently. In fact, we went through, Alex remembers this one, through, when Brett was building, we had that third-story apartment in the one building in Farmall Drive, I think is where it is. We had to end up putting a special platform on the bank so that we could actually reach that third story, just the way the ground was designed around the building. So.
And these types of buildings, I'm sure everybody's aware, but just in case somebody's not, these types of buildings are all fully sprinkled and come with a state-of-the-art fire alarm system that is plugged into all the responding authorities directly. So it's not a scenario where somebody smells smoke. By the time somebody smells smoke, the fire department has long been called, which can lead to different types of issues of false alarms. But these buildings are pretty well designed from a life safety standpoint.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Any board members have any other questions before I open it up to the public? Do we have anybody here from the public?
Yes,
I'll
Barb?
start off. This is Andrea.
Okay.
I think statistically, it might be good to know, like, how often in other communities they actually need to use a ladder truck for that life safety purpose, or even fighting fires. In Williston, how often has it been used in the last 10 years for life saving? And Shelburne, the same thing. And the importance of understanding, I think, just really statistically, the buildings are built for getting people out. So might be some information that the town might want to know before doing this.
The only thing I would say to that, Andrea, is to my knowledge, the only fire that I am aware of in a building of this type was 6 or 7 years ago in St. Albans, and it was a building that wasn't quite filled yet. This type of construction is consistent with all of the 3- and 4-story apartment buildings that you see in and around Chittenden County. And this is a pretty small town. I'm personally not aware of any situations where we've had a major structure fire at any of these type buildings. Al may be able to speak to that more than I.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, we actually, there was actually one last week. I'm going to say last week, probably wasn't. Probably 2-3 weeks ago in Williston, actually, was the most recent one. Well, Essex had one. The problem is the situation where those buildings exist is that they run that truck to every call, every fire alarm that comes in, because you don't know, that it's not a fire. So, I can tell you at Williston, they go probably 2 to 3 times a day to some of their buildings that they have currently. And the thing is, you never know when it is a fire. And another thing about that is, because if you have that type building and you don't have the apparatus to protect it, the insurance for the whole town goes up for everybody that owns property. I'm sure, Ben, you've seen a lot with the ISO ratings on a lot of the buildings that, you've done, that, if you don't have proper fire protection, there's a penalty. Andrea, actually, you were on the board when it happened, when Horace Mann Insurance put the wrong rating in town, and some of those residential houses went up $400 a year on the insurance. So anytime you don't have the ability to protect what's in your community, you do pay a premium through your insurance for that. So that's why it's one of the reasons it's very important to stay on top of having the right equipment to protect the structures that you have in your community.
well, then we're just paying it on our tax rate. So I think it's just important to really do a risk assessment on this.
John Lyman, is there anything that stops from issuing a certificate of occupancy until that is in place?
John, this is Alex. I mean, you can condition an approval on anything that's supported in the regulations. So if that's an issue, a final approval could have such a condition on it. I think Mitch and I are hoping that this conversation tonight helps flesh out some of the nuance. And then per Al's suggestion, this is another issue that really the select board needs to weigh in on. They're the ones that best understand the town's capital budget and plan, and how the fire department's slice of that weighs in, and when and if we're actually going to purchase major new pieces of equipment. So my hope is that we could get some input from them. I think we said this before with another item, sooner rather than later. This one I think really does need to be sooner rather than later, so we can understand what's real. And I'll be honest with you, Al, what you're saying tonight makes it sound like there's a path forward that's both affordable and perhaps timely. And the capital budget and plan doesn't reflect that. Mm-hmm. So I think it's important that the select board, who determines that with departmental help from department heads like Al, have this conversation, and then we can come back to the board and everyone will be on the same page.
Yeah, if I could just kind of add on to that, the conversations we've been having for 6-7 years now is we projected out about an 18-year timeline to buy basically the replacement for engine 3 and actually a brand new Quint, being $98,000 a year, going into that one capital line item truck replacement for 18 years. So, you know, if we're able to actually, and that's figuring in that $1 million ladder truck. So if we're able to actually change, you know, rethink and go the used route, you know, we could change that projected timeline considerable. So it's certainly something I'm looking forward to having more conversation about. I mean, the officers have thought a lot about this in the last 8-9 months, and I think we really do have a good path forward, and it'll actually have a less of an impact on tax rates.
And just to layer in on John's comment about the CO, forget about the fact that I wouldn't build a $6 million building without knowing I could get a CO. We'd never get it financed. The bank would see that, and we wouldn't get past the front door on lending with a restriction like that. When you pull a zoning permit, there's got to be a clear, controllable path to getting a CO.
Yeah, and one follow-up, this is Alex. I should have mentioned, John, the regs do give the DRB the power to phase projects based on the town's capital budget and plan, based on infrastructure that we plan to purchase that's necessary, that a development is going to rely on. This is one of those cases, and Ben's right. It wouldn't be handled through a condition on issuance of a CO. Your board would have to figure this out and basically work with Ben to say, okay, based on what we understand, that building will be part of a later phase or something along those lines. So that's where I think these conversations with Al and the select board are key. Because of what Mitch said, which I think we all understand that this building, the congregate care senior housing building, wants to be the first one built or one of the first ones built. So we need to make sure the time horizons sync up.
I would just simply add that as far as the DRB will provide guidance as far as when permits are issued, but once a permit is issued, it has to be able to meet, if a structure meets the requirements of that permit, then it gets a CO.
All right. Any more public comment?
Yeah, I thought I heard Barb trying to say something earlier.
Yeah, I've been trying to get in for a while. Alex, did you just say that the senior housing is the, what do you call it? Congregate building that we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, when I looked at the plans back in January, I thought that building was the 2-story building. Has that changed?
It hasn't changed. It's been a 3-story building from the get-go.
I think there might have been, you might be remembering, one of the wrong buildings was noted as 3-story. I think in the last time we were looking through it, and that was a correction that was made during one of the previous meetings, one of the last ones we had in office, I guess.
Yeah, that might have been the issue, Barb. In the staff report, I think Mitch and I collaborate, but I think I made that boo-boo, and all the buildings are lettered H, K, L, G.
Right.
But yeah, this senior housing building, 3 stories. Plus, as Mitch said, under building parking. So the profile might be more like a 3.5-story, although it's not fully designed yet.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll move on to public input for topics not covered.
I have an email, but from Catherine Goldsmith, but I can see that she's on. Catherine, are you able to speak, or would you like me to speak? All right, I'll just go by that you're having a challenge speaking. But basically, she sent me an email that she states is from her, from Owiso Makuku, Nathan Fry, and Craig Chevrier. Based on the difficulties we are all encountering in our day-to-day professional communications and VSC communications via electronic means such as Zoom, we believe that any complex projects that merit extensive public opinion require course coordination between multiple town committees or boards and include dense explanatory documents, for example, blueprints, agency studies, and consultant studies, should be postponed until in-person meetings are again feasible. The likelihood that citizens will not be able to fully understand dense technological documents and access online meetings due to insufficient internet connections degrades the public comment process. Further, the spotty nature of most digital meeting platforms degrades intercommittee dialogue and makes it more likely that we will miss or insufficiently discuss critical aspects of these long-term projects. Tonight, we could not hear parts of Mike Bougio's comments as well as members of the public. And this is from Catherine Goldsmith. What I'm just simply saying is, and what we're trying to do the best that we can on this, and I'm responding to this. And again, send me emails. You should know that there are several people during this meeting that I have emailed, and you kind of see me looking in a couple of different directions as this meeting's going on. I've got my email up on this side. I'm watching how VCAM is doing on this side. And so we are coordinating it. We're doing the best that we can. And right now we're looking at trying to make these processes go as quick as possible. If anybody listening here has some technical questions, has some concerns that they want to see particular documents, are having problems finding stuff on the Dropbox, I have been answering these questions for a number of different people. Please contact me. I'm here to help you with that. It's what I do.
All right, anybody else?
Catherine, you are muted. Let's unmute you.
Comment is from the Village Steering Committee.
We heard the last part of that, Catherine. Please say it again. You were at start, you muted yourself. You're now unmuted. Please repeat.
That comment is from the Village Steering Committee.
Okay, we heard you.
What did she say, Mitch?
She said that the comment is from the Village Steering Committee.
Okay. Do we have anybody else?
Okay.
Is that an,
Well,
I guess that's a no?
if I may, this is John Lyman. I'd just like to say, I think it's important we do our best to continue. How life is different, but I think it's important we continue the best we can with what we have. That's me personally. That's part, but also part of the DRB. I think it's important we continue.
All right, I'm leaving.
I see that Daniel Ade is the light is going on. Are you trying to speak?
Nope, nope, nope.
Okay.
All right, Mitch. I guess what's next? We're up for May 19th.
May 19th, what we have on the schedule is a site visit at 6 p.m. at Russell.
Yeah.
And we've tentatively scheduled it for that. We'll see if if we are allowed with our social distancing. I will simply say, if we do go forward, I'll just remind people, bring masks, we'll social distance, we'll do the best that we can on that. And then we'll have the Russell hearing. And after the Russell hearing, we will have our next phase in for Haystack. I know we pushed one part of that off. We'll have some discussions on whether we'll put that on the next one or put it to the one after that. But what we have tentatively scheduled for that is traffic. And I say traffic, but there's a lot of other particular issues that are kind of involved in traffic or traffic related, as well as stormwater. That's our tentative plans on that.
Okay.
And we're going to
And
come back to the.
We have no other particular things on the agenda on that.
And we acknowledge the new submittals.
Mitch, can I say something? This is Bob.
Sure.
So it just the stormwater caught my ear. What is happening next with stormwater?
The stormwater design has been evolving. If you read some of the stuff that that we have on the Dropbox, there were some significant concerns. They have recently submitted some additional items that I am in the process of reviewing that has addressed many of those. And we're trying to get the stormwater design to be compliant with the regulations.
Okay, but is that going to be up at you said at the next meeting, the May 19th meeting?
Correct.
Okay.
And I should have all of the extra stuff that'll be part of that well in advance for the public to review.
Okay.
Now, Mitch, you said possibly.
Well, I'm saying as far as that's what we have scheduled. If, and I've actually reviewed much of the stormwater, I don't really see any issues that are too major. There's a couple of things that, a couple of pipes that need to be slightly adjusted, and one particular, well, I'll spare you the details on that, but basically, I hope to be able to continue to work with the applicant to get that set. And traffic-wise, again, more things are coming in, and Ben and I actually had a conversation regarding that even today. So we're working to try to finalize that so this way the board can hear that. And if there is any issues that it's best to push it to the next meeting on either of these, there'll be some other things that we can discuss. Like, for instance, the part that we postponed for today.
All right. Just acknowledging that we have new public correspondence that's in the packet.
Mm-hmm.
Dick, you had another question?
Nope, I just talking about the ratio of commercial and residential that we skipped today, so they'll push that off for next week. So
yeah,
Mitch just said that. So okay.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Dennis, probably a formal motion to continue this hearing to the May 19th meeting would be helpful for the record.
I'll make a motion to continue the Haystack preliminary subdivision plat to the May 19th meeting.
Actually, Dennis, if you could add also, you're technically continuing the conditional use development in a stream setback on these applications as well.
Okay, and the conditional use for development in a stream buffer, which is spelt wrong. Supplemental staff report.
Well, thank you.
I'll second.
I'll take full credit for that one.
All right. Hey, I found a mistake. All right, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
No, wait, we got to vote on that.
We got to vote.
Oh, sorry. My phone's about ready to die. Do I have a sec? I'll make I made the motion. Who has a second?
Dick seconded you, I think.
Yeah, so we
all
got
those in favor?
2 seconds.
Aye.
Dick Jordan, aye.
Ted Bloomberg, aye.
Aye.
Sarah Murphy, aye.
Dennis, I.
Brandon, aye.
Okay,
Thanks, everybody. Stay safe, and we'll see you.
around.
We'll physically see each other May 19th.
Well, maybe.
Yes, we'll be in touch ahead of time as to whether we can have that physical site visit or not.
Yeah, I'm
And let
not,
me just also add that those site visits are open to the public. So we will provide information on the agenda regarding where to meet and some rules that we'll be following.
I'm not sure that congregation is allowed right now by state rules, but I could be wrong.
So I was going to
isn't
say, I
it-
mean, a site visit is one thing. You can maintain separation, you're outside, but meeting in a conference room may be a different story even on the 19th. So
Oh, I think that's for sure.
Right, so we'll end up meeting if everything, and again, this, as you know, was planned weeks ago to a point in time where that we predicted this might be the case. But if not, we will let you know and going forward. And even if we do, and assuming we do meet at a site visit, afterwards, we wouldn't go back to town hall. We would go back to our respective places and then have a meeting similar to this.
Mitch, just a quick question. I anticipate already not being able to attend that site visit on the 19th. As soon as the, I guess the new maps are created and new plans with contour banding, will you make those accessible to the board?
Sure. Actually, I received a draft of it from the applicant. I had a couple of comments, and they are going to modify that. But I can put that also on the, I can put the basic one on the Dropbox with a note on it, basically saying this is going to be edited.
right. And Brandon also, usually if you can't make a site meeting, once everything's been staked out, you're usually welcome to go visit on your own and take a walk around, just to see if you have any questions that your eyes see that you don't get from a topo.
Yeah, and,
Sure.
and to that point, Brandon, this is Alex. I think Mitch will work with the engineering surveying team on this project. If there's an opportunity to get this thing staked out and ready ahead of the meeting, there might be an opportunity for people to do these site visits individually, especially if we're not allowed to do them collaboratively. So we'll see if we can't make that happen in advance.
And I'm also going to talk to the applicant to, or I should say, and their designer, to see if we can just simply allow you to come on at a different time of your choosing.
That's what.
So you can see it before the meeting as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. It's just a big chunk of time to commit in one evening with a young child at home. So
We've all been there.
thanks.
You're welcome.
All right. We're
Thanks,
adjourned.
everybody.
Move to adjourn.
Bye, y'all.
Thank
Have a
you.
good one, everybody.